But what you can see behind us is the collaboration print between Gordon, Cheung, and Shepard Fairey. It's in honor of Vincent Chen, who's a Chinese-American citizen who unfortunately was brutally beaten to death in a racial attack in 1982. So what we're going to be talking about with Gordon today is the collaboration of that print between you and Shepard, the iconography within the print, and the importance of that print as well. How's it been being in LA for you, though?
Oh, LA's been great. I had to come in via Mexico, but it's all good. I mean, the weather here you can't complain about. Coming from the UK as well, and I think London is like a little bit flooded right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we're having better weather than they are back home.
So it's nice to be here for my first solo show.
And the response has been amazing. I mean, it's extraordinary, the people that we've had coming through so far. And to do this during COVID as well, you know.
Yeah, it just, you know, with these circumstances, just things have really come together with a lot of positive momentum.
Yeah, are we in? Well, positive and kind of, and I think people are just, hey, there he is!
Hey, guys.
Hey, Shepard.
How are you?
So great. Thank you for joining us on this gloriously beautiful day in Los Angeles. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that, buddy. The glory, the wonder of the new IG world and doing live feeds.
Right.
You know, I'll just make a quick introduction. You know, for those of you who are just joining us, it was a huge honor for us as Coast and Scarry to join with ICFAC and help put this exhibition together for Gordon Cheung. And one of the great moments that's come out of this show, and I think one of the most important things we've done, is this collaboration print that you and Gordon have created together. I will mention really quick that ICFAC is a non-for-profit. International Chinese Fine Arts Council is organized and dedicated to supporting the Chinese diaspora community, artists, collectors, museums around the world, and really in helping engage and build platforms for people with a new vision of taking the narrative back for Asian Americans and Asian artists globally. But now I'll get to you guys. You know, thank you so much, Shepard, for doing this, and thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's great to join you guys. Gordon, I checked out the show for a good while yesterday. It's really beautiful. The depth in the pieces in person is so much more astounding than what you can see in a photograph. And yeah, I was really happy to see all the nuances in person, and then also to see the scale variation. It's very, you know, it's very immersive and awesome to see the large pieces, and then mixed with the the window patterning pieces. I don't know what you call those that you made out of it's bamboo and paper mache. Yeah, with the newsprint, but those are really extraordinary. So, yeah, like many art shows, it really has a cumulative power that's more than any individual piece, even though there are many exquisite individual pieces.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say so. I really appreciate that.
So I'm gonna, you know, we have a 30-minute time slot, so I'm gonna take us straight in. Thank you for that, Shepard. And it was great to see you yesterday. It was wonderful walking you around the space and getting to see Amanda and the whole crew. You know, it's one of the joys of coming back to LA, living in the UK now, is we've kept this relationship going. And I get to see you guys, and we've collaborated in the past. But I'm going to talk about the art now. Let's talk about Vincent Chen. One of the reasons I felt that yourself and Gordon would be such an interesting combination as a collaboration was what you just talked about, which was the layering and the materiality and the image making. And, you know, everything, you know, like your work, Shepard, which I've followed for such a long time, nothing is there by happen chance. Everything in your pieces is there for a reason, and it has it's beautiful, but it also very much has something to say. And I think that's why I thought bringing you together would be such a, and the, the results speak for themselves. So Gordon, I'm going to start with you really quick. Can you tell us like the importance of who Vincent Chin is and the importance of Vincent Chin in American history, who this print is honored and made in honor of?
Well, when we, Shepard and I, we're responding to the modern sort of history right now of, of Asian hate, and or rather Stop Asian Hate, or in support of Stop Asian Hate. And when the previous most powerful man in the world, designated the virus as being China virus, and the dangers that sort of speech creates, we've seen the results, of that. But this isn't a single moment of history, but rather an interconnected one. And so Vincent Chin was unfortunately murdered by a couple of auto car workers in 1982. And despite overwhelming evidence, to the fact that they had murdered him, and consciously so, they got away with it. And it sparked a huge galvanizing sort of force in the American nation. And people came together to fight, for American Asian rights. And so, although it's unfortunate that his death is what was the spark of that, it's perhaps the positive aspect of what occurred from that event. And previously, the African American sort of rights were gathering momentum, but Asians were falling by the wayside in terms of being recognized as having or deserving American civil rights. And so that's what Vincent Chin, to remember Vincent Chin as an example of a galvanizing moment. And in some ways that's what we have right now as well, in that Asians are now standing loud and proud, of their contributions to this nation, and rightfully so. And as a result, Shepard and I felt it was important to sort of find a way to remember these histories. That this isn't a singular moment. That it's actually a chain of events, and one in which needs to be fought against perpetually.
Amazing. And Shepard, kind of carrying on from what Gordon was just relaying, the importance of activism and using art as a platform. As an activist and an artist yourself, which from the day I met you, you've always been, how important is it for you to use your platform and your voice as a visual artist to kind of raise these other voices and to champion causes that need to be heard?
It's essential to my work. I love to make compelling pictures, but I don't want them just to be decorative. And I look at this as, okay, yes, I'm an artist first, but I'm also a human being that cares about other human beings and about the planet. So, social justice is a really important part of my work. And when I looked at what Gordon was doing with a lot of really seductive imagery, but then underlying there's a dissection of a lot of political and social issues, or around money and politics, history, etc. I thought, what a great potential collaborator. Also because I've made a lot of work about various injustices, but racism, sexism, xenophobia, scapegoating, abuse of power by the police. All of those things are a natural fit with a piece to raise awareness about the racism towards Asians, and to tell Vincent Chin's story, which I knew his name, but I was young when he was killed, so it was great to get a deeper look into his story and understand how, as many strides as we feel like we've made, there are always things happening that there is a historical precedent for that need to be remembered, and whether that's the Japanese internment during World War II being analogous to the Muslim ban, or what's happening now as a result of anti-Asian sentiments because of the coronavirus, and Donald Trump really fanning the flames of hate and division. It's all stuff that I think we need to be constantly reminded of, so that we can try to do better.
Well, it's interesting, as you just brought up, and that leads me on to my next kind of topic for us, is first of all, I just want to thank the Granger Historical Picture Archive for donating the imagery that is actually inlaid at many levels within this print. And at the posters at the time, I think they're kind of the kind of throwaway name was Yellow Peril. And
Right.
During the internment camps of the Second World War, there was a huge propaganda campaign about really alienating and pushing East Asian-looking people, to the margins of society, and not accepting them and making them the enemy and making them the bad guy, basically, in so many ways. Propaganda posters, your work, really relate to each other. So kind of tell us about, the propaganda posters, the images that you and Gordon chose, both of you, for this, but also how kind of taking that narrative back and changing the narrative is so powerful in what you do.
One thing that I wanted to, I forgot to say that I meant to say, is that I've been doing a lot of this work around issues that I have empathy toward, but I'm not necessarily subjected to as a white person. So I think that being a collaborator and an ally, and working with somebody that has firsthand experience is really important. Not only in the authenticity of the piece, but also a demonstration of how we should be working together as human beings. So I appreciate Gordon's willingness to let me sort of be part of this, making that happen, where I think hopefully it's a good thing for people to see, like, hey, being artists and working together. It's not, a lot of people look at artists as people who are doing things in isolation, but I know a lot of artists who really are activists and collaborate. So this is, I think, I'm proud that we're demonstrating that idea. But as far as the imagery goes, I mean, it's really horrifying, a lot of the just intense racism from these Yellow Peril prints, from Uncle Sam kicking a Chinese character to push them away, or things with opium dens, and it's a lot of, there's a lot that just shows that there's a long history of racism towards Chinese people, but Asians in general. And another thing about the Japanese internment camps was that it was actually 7 Asian nations that were being discriminated against during World War II. So it wasn't just Japanese people. It was it was several Asian nations. Anyone that could be confused for a Japanese person was basically targeted, which is just so xenophobic.
Which is what happened to Vincent Chin. Which is exactly what happened to Vincent Chin. He's actually Chinese, but he was being blamed by these auto workers for being responsible for taking away all their jobs because of the Japanese companies. And also the posters that we've used, from Granger, they're from the Chinese Exclusion Act sort of posters as well. So very much the same sort of narrative of like blaming, Chinese or Asians, for loss of jobs, and resulting in political actions or motivations to use racism as a way to sort of blame, a minority for economic policies that they themselves are not responsible for. So it's the same story, in the same way that today, in modern times, right now, China's being blamed for taking away technologies, or blamed for the economy, and now blamed for the pandemic as well. and we see the results. We see the results on the streets.
Yeah, I use a lot of historical, whether it's propaganda imagery or things from newspaper articles, layered into my work, because I usually feel like whatever we're dealing with in the present is, it's a result of a lot of historical things that have set the table for things that are good or bad to happen. And so, we always have to think about not only what we're doing in the moment, how it impacts now, but how it impacts the future. And so I think Vincent and I were, Gordon and I were thinking about the Vincent piece in the same way, in that, there's a what happened to Vincent Chin. The table was set for that, with all of these racist pieces of propaganda through history that had informed attitudes that made those auto workers think it was okay to scapegoat him.
And then the other thing I wanted to, first of all, I want to also thank the Vincent Chen Foundation for allowing us the honor to use his image. And I think that was really important to actually get them involved and get their approval for this piece. And they're thrilled and they're happy with the results, and we couldn't have done it without their blessing. So I really want to thank them for that. We've talked about the propaganda posters. Gordon, talk about the Asian elements, and I know you both you and Shepard have put them into the piece, like the significance of the poppies or the lily or some of the other elements that we see within the piece.
Yeah, well, the poppy is in reference to the Opium Wars, and a little known sort of history, in which the country that I've come from, Britain, where I was born, was responsible for and became the first narco state in history when the East India Trade Company requested for them to go to war with China in order to force them to buy opium. Because China didn't want anything else than silver, and it resulted in a weakened China, and then from there, other foreign nations invaded and took port cities and occupied them. And so these are the posters that refer to the opium dens, and this kind of like. There's a sort of irony there, because it's the Western powers that actually kind of created this in the first place as well.
Almost like the tropes in films, British and American films, Western films, up until recently, every time you saw an Asian actress playing a historical role, she was laying down in an opium den with an opium pipe, and it was just kind of this given idea of what our idea of people is, and it was being force-fed to us.
Yeah, it's a kind of stereotyping. It's a kind of projection of an identity from a Western propaganda machine.
Or whitewashing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not realistic at all. But But when your mind isn't given any other information about an unknown, if you like, or a person, or a race by extension, you're gonna work from that information that you have in your mind, until you work hard to somehow dismantle that information itself. And so the lily sort of represents the mother, who was called Lily, and she was an incredible, emotional force, having seen her son, her adopted son, not receive the justice from the American judicial system. The judge himself said about the two white men that murdered him, he said, "These are not the type of men that you put into prison." And it's like, why? Because of the color of his skin. It's just like it showed and it resonated through the population that Asian people or Asian Americans were not valued, on the same equal status as they deserve, within the nation and what they brought to the nation as well. So it's these sorts of seismic sort of economic and social sort of forces that we're trying to sort of like amplify, and I think that's what you do, Shepard. That you help to amplify these human voices, with the type of work that you make, and you do it extremely powerfully. So with the with the stage that you enable as well. So and I think these sorts of histories need to be sort of revisited, because we unfortunately suffer from historical amnesia. And once we understand these histories, we come to understand who we are, and from there we can move forward to become the nation or the people or the person that we want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with all that. I thought the suggestion of including the poppies was really great, simply because, well, one, we both use flowers in our work frequently, and I'm often using flowers as a way to soften the challenging nature of some of the other imagery that I'm dealing with. So it's a little bit of sugar with the medicine, but in this case, I think there's an extra layer in that what's decorative and appealing and seductive also has a sinister side historically, that if you take a closer look, the poppy and the connection to the opium, it's a metaphor for what we always need to do, which is not just accept things at face value, but look a little bit deeper. And often sinister things are presented in a very appealing package, and that's how they're sold to the people. So, I like that element of it as well, and I thought it was really a great idea to include the lily to reference Vincent's mother. And I collaborating is not always easy, but I felt like this fell into place pretty nicely in that we went back and forth a few times, and each step it got better, rather than occasionally I'll feel like I'm at an impasse. So I hope you felt the same way.
Oh, absolutely, Shepard. It was. I think we share similar sort of processes in how we use Photoshop and Illustrator, and the way how we collage, and sample, imagery together, and the way that you sort of use that, it's not fair, the protest image. You brought in different timelines into the work as well to bring it up to date. From the historical sort of images from Granger, and obviously the relevance of how it reflects upon, the
well, I thought it was important to have that through line, which I know you did too. So, anything that's going to pique someone's interest to look deeper. These are the sort of visual sound bites and actual media sound bites that I'm looking to make sure that are included in a way that sits behind the dominant imagery, but still grabs your attention enough to make you want to take a closer look and educate yourself.
Well, what's interesting with what the two of you created and the back and forth of the images, and I was honored to kind of be a little bit a part of that, to see the transformation from what started as one portrait of Vincent Chin and then the background posters to create this amazing piece, is how you both kept very authentic voices, but also made compromises and built bridges in art together. You found ways of both bringing your identities and your voices into this piece, but creating something quite authentic together, if that makes sense. And I think that's really important in a collaboration as well.
Yeah, I totally think so. I mean, the image deconstruction technique that Gordon uses, I think, is really beautiful, and the irony that it's that it's a digital thing and yet it feels very organic. What do you call it? The glitch technique, right? But it also feels like brush strokes. So there's sometimes I think with something that could feel too maybe too sterile and too much like a like a iconic propaganda poster, to play with that and abstract areas and have it have that painterly quality. I think that for this, especially with the nature of all the imagery and all the unfortunate events that happened, the murder of Vincent Chin, it's definitely something that I think helps to allow the viewer to process the image without feeling overwhelmed.
And I think the narrative of the piece, when you look at the piece, and I think one of the very smart things is putting the remembrance of Vincent Chin on one side and honoring that, and having the Stop Asian Hate at the bottom, and the transfer of power. And part of the transfer of power, Gordon, you talk about in the show, is just taking the narrative back. It's not a financial power, it's not a brute power, it's just a voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's history is written by victors, and it's important to sort of question, the motivations and agendas for who writes history, for us. These are the narratives that sort of bind us into, a tribe, a group, a community, a society, a nation. And so we have to take control of those stories. And I think that you do that as well, Shepard. You help to sort of highlight, those stories that might well be more marginalized, that those invisible voices or voices that would be otherwise invisible, that, humanity isn't, and in this particular context with this, poster as well, isn't or shouldn't be a history written by, just one particular race. It's, particularly in a nation that is a tapestry of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shouldn't just be written by the most powerful people who have, of course, an interest in playing up their brilliance and their power and downplaying the contributions everyone else has made. So, yeah, I mean, I frequently look at my work as just a counter narrative, and people say, oh, you have an agenda with what you're doing, so it's propaganda. And sometimes I've even called it that, but it's I consider propaganda to be something that says it's the last word on an issue. I like to be the introduction of a counter discussion to the dominant narrative, and then say, where it goes from there is up to the viewer, the reader, etc. But I do think it's very important for there to be voices other than just from the most powerful people.
Yeah. And I think in the arts, the relationship of the arts and politics can be quite strained at times. There are many, think criticisms can be leveled against, artists who try to sort of converge, art and politics, and as being ineffective. But I disagree. I believe art can be a galvanizing force. Not necessarily one that has immediate, change as such, but one in which, through history as a marker, of, the ability to be able to resonate, those sorts of questions that need to be addressed, such as breaking those dominant narratives in order to voice, those that are being or have been made invisibilized. I just made that word up, but it's but you get the idea. And I do think that you do that. You help to amplify. You become a loudspeaker for all aspects of what makes up a nation. So and I think that's what we've tried to do, with this, in terms of its histories and the people that have been marginalized, because it was deafening, the silence, with China virus. If that had been replaced by any other sort of race as a descriptor before it, we've come to understand how dangerous that terminology, that phrasing can be.
And again, our words and our messaging has power, and so does the art that you guys create. It's a powerful tool, and in some ways a weapon of a different kind to kind of create new dialogues, rewrite history, change the narrative, and give almost more voice to the voiceless. And not voiceless, I think, out of apathy. I just think voiceless of being constricted for so long. And I think the more we can do to elevate people and help them lift their voices, you know, and I think that's really what a lot of our job is about in what we do within this kind of in this life we live in this world we work in. I mean, working in the art world is such a privilege, you know, and it's hard work. I don't think a lot of people realize how much you and both Gordon put in studio time and research time and academic time.
Well, that was the other thing. It was just like we had such a short timeline to actually produce this as well, and so that was great. You know, that we managed to, you know, because we believe in, like, you know, the you know what we're trying to do here, and so it was great. You know, working with you.
And yeah, I mean, I'm frequently responding to things that are happening in the world and trying to come up with a timely response. And I you know, so even though as an artist I'd love to always have more time to experiment and finesse, sometimes, you know, what needs to be said quickly, and time is of the essence. So I know that you and I were both feeling that it was very important also to donate the proceeds from this print to people who are doing work on the ground. And that's one of the things I frequently do with my work. And when people say, oh, you know, art is just for elite people, it doesn't really move the dial, I say, well, it doesn't have to just be for elite people, one. And two, I forget whose quote it is. I'm sure it was an artist, but that, you know, there's the quote: "The culture is the arts elevated to ideas."
Oh,
so, and so, you know, I think that a lot of people are not necessarily thinking intellectually about what the norms of culture are, but they respond very intuitively to them. So even if someone doesn't point to art as having made a big difference, there's the possibility that it did. And I'm driven by that idea, that possibility every day.
And even if it's a seed that's planted many years ago and then it resonates at the time it's meant to resonate, there's something that can grow and develop from that. Shepard, thank you for your time today. I just want to let everybody know that we will have some of these prints here at the space at 8030 North Highland on Saturday, the 14th of August. You know, first come, first served. I also want to say thank you for doing this and also releasing a big number of these prints on the Obey website for a broader audience. And as Shepard mentioned, and I want to thank you both, all of the money from this print will be donated to ICFAC as a scholarship fund to kind of further educate those who want to become social activists. And you know what's incredible, Shepard? Since we've started this, we have hundreds of young applications already of people looking for grants, wanting to make a difference. So this money will literally go into the hands and the pockets and school fees of people who are going to school in September.
Yeah,
awesome.
And ICFAC is just recently sort of restarted a non-profit organization, but they themselves as an organization under this climate right now has inspired other groups to form, you know, in support of Stop Asian Hate as well. So, you know, this is progress, you know, in a way of like, you know, trying to make a better world and to help with, you know, marginalized people to, you know, find support.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure to work with you guys, and beautiful show, Gordon.
Thank you, Shepard.
Thank you, Shepard. Amazing.
It's been great working with you too.
Hey, buddy. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about this, you know, Instagram, message me, and we'll get back to you. Shepard, we know how busy you are. Gordon has to go as well, so thank you very much for showing up for us today and being part of the process.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care,
All right,
guys.
cheers, buddy. Bye.
Bye.